I want to argue that this story is very relevant to America's pivot to Asia. To me, President Obama's most important and most interesting foreign policy initiative in his first term was his attempt to pivot the United States toward Asia. Basically, the argument goes like this. The country took a strategic detour by invading Iraq and by prolonging its occupation of Afghanistan. America is overly invested in the Middle East and it's underinvested in Asia, where many of its greatest future challenges and opportunities lie. And now, as President Obama sought to rebalance the country's portfolio. Wealth, and this makes powerful strategic sense to me, and not only because I'm an Australian, which is an ally of the United States, but I spend a lot of my day job is analysing US foreign policy, and it makes powerful strategic sense, I think. Wealth and power are shifting eastward. We know about everybody in this room knows about the enormous growth in China's economy, in the Asian economy. We know that if the economic outlook in Asia is positive, the security outlook is increasingly unpredictable. The Taiwan Strait is calm, but there are worrying tensions on the Korean Peninsula and in the East China Sea and the South China Sea. And these challenges, to me, make the pivot urgent. Because if Washington can't reassure its allies that sequestration and defence cuts and shutdowns and potential defaults and general dysfunction in Washington will not reduce the US military presence in Asia, then US allies in Asia may take matters into their own hands, which could be unpredictable. Equally, China may conclude that America lacks staying power and resolve. So Washington has to walk a fine line. It needs to reassure allies without emboldening them. It needs to project strength to China without projecting belligerence. Here's the problem. It is remarkably difficult to pivot a country as large and diverse as the United States. What I describe in the book, in a sense, is a successful pivot of the country, where Roosevelt pivoted it outward from being a domestically focused country to an outward-looking country, and he pivoted it towards Europe, because even though America entered the war when Japan attacked the United States, Roosevelt never departed from the Germany first policy, because he saw the greater evil as residing in Berlin, not in Tokyo, the greater threat to American security interests coming from Berlin, coming from Germany, not from Japan. So Roosevelt was responsible for this pivot, and it was a campaign of subtle diplomacy carried off with great flair. There were endless tactical shifts, but beneath them a clear and inexorable direction can be discerned. It took supreme presidential concentration, the diversion of resources on a massive scale. It took dozens of speeches, fireside chats, decisions, conversations and meetings. That's what it takes to pivot a country as large and difficult and rancorous with as many divergent interests as the United States. Obama's challenge is not as urgent or as deadly as Roosevelt's. Plainly, a rising China is in no way analogous to the Axis regimes. Yet without a strong US presence, the region faces strategic uncertainty, power imbalances, and the risk of destabilising rivalry.